Blessings to you, family. Welcome to Pastor Jerome TV. I'm your host, Pastor Jerome Davison. I want to welcome all of you in. Thank you all, you subscribers, for subscribing and watching and tuning in and liking the videos and sharing the videos. I appreciate that. We want to get the word of the gospel out as much as we can. We want to continue on our part 2 series on sex with the angel, and I believe we left off in a very profound and powerful place where the angels begin to visit Lot in the city of Sodom, and in the next city, Gomorrah. And Lot happened to live in the city of Sodom, and the angels come in and deliver him. But while they were delivering him, the men of that city wanted to have sexual relationships with the angels. And they told Lot that if you don't deliver these men to us, we're going to do worse to you than what we're planning to do to them. And so the angels struck them with blindness. But the chapter before that, we look at Abraham and Sarah just hanging out in their tent. God himself shows up in a theophany. He shows up in fleshly form, and 2 angels beside him in theophanic form. And when Abraham saw the 3 men coming towards him, he recognized that divinity was in God, God the middle one, and Abraham bows himself before him. And he tells Sarah, he says, I want you to make some meals and make some food for God and the angels. And while Sarah was in the tent and had the men preparing the food, God began to give prophetic insight to Abraham as to what his future looked like as the father of many nations. And he told him, he says, in the time of life, in about 9 months, he says, you're going to have a son. And you're going to, and while he was saying this, Sarah laughed within herself because she knew that she was too old to have a son and have a child, and Abraham was way too old himself. And God asked Sarah, he says, why did you laugh? And Sarah said, I didn't laugh. And God said, well, you did laugh. And he says, since you like to laugh, you and I are going to share a joke from now on. He said that when you have the name of your son, you're going to call his name Isaac, and Isaac means laughter. And so, God has a sense of humor. And so when they got through with that encounter, God stood up and walked away, and he met with the angels, and he says, hey, should I hide this thing from Abraham that I'm getting ready to do? Seeing that Abraham is a man who knows how to order his family after me, which is Abraham was a man who kept the covenant. He circumcised all of his sons, and the circumcision was a sign, a sexual sign, that you as a man would be sexually pure, and not only sexually pure, but you would find a woman of faith, and that you would rear up children who would love God and serve God and bring up offspring after God in a world who have offspring that are not after God. And so God loves that about us men who have sexual discipline. And if you can have sexual discipline, well, then you can get revelation. If you have sexual discipline, you could have a powerful prayer life. If you could have sexual discipline, you can get understanding from God and breakthroughs from God and trust from God. And that's just a quick little note there. But these angels come in and deliver Lot. And the men of the city were so perverse and so burning in their passions for same-sex relations that they didn't even recognize that these were angels that they were trying to sodomize. And so we discovered in our teaching last week, the last part 1, that this sexual perversion does not come from our innate nature. It did not come from human nature, but pedophilia, homosexuality, bestiality, all these things came from the fallen angels. And so we'll discover that further in our teaching, that fallen angels brought these type of sexual lust into the world. And this is what we're dealing with, you and I. We're dealing with demonic forces that are in people, that are seducing spirits, and that are causing people to lust in perverted sexual passions after each other. So in Genesis chapter 6, we see something very awesome. And I want to give you the plot real quick, if you don't mind. And I believe we can make ourselves a Genesis chapter 6 movie, because in Genesis chapter 6, this thing was just going crazy. There was sex, there was violence. As a matter of fact, there was so much violence that God says that every thought of man is violent continually. And that was because of the fallen angels. But in Genesis chapter 6, in verse 1, something awesome is happening. Now, I want you to understand that angels are very intelligent beings. Their intelligence is far beyond ours, and they know the plans of God, and they know when God says something, it's going to happen. So now look at Genesis chapter 6 verse 1. It says this: "And it came to pass, when men began to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them." That's profound. That's powerful. The angels who left heaven with Satan, the Bible lets us know that when Satan was kicked out of heaven, with his tail he drew a third of the stars, and stars and angels are interchangeable throughout Scripture. So he took a third of the angels with him, which is a company of angels that we cannot even number. When they fell, they were watching. And according to Genesis chapter 6 verse 1, when men begin to multiply on the face of the earth, and daughters were born unto them, the angels begin to get restless, and they had to come up with a plan or a scheme to overthrow the will of God and to mess up humanity. And what I mean by that, in Genesis chapter 6 verse 1, that men begin to multiply, and when we begin to multiply and have sons and have sons and have sons, the angels started to kind of get worried. But that worry did not grow into a great concern until they started to have daughters. And when they started to have daughters, then the plan had to start taking action, because in Genesis chapter 2 and chapter 3, where Adam and Eve falls, God's prophetic words to Eve was very, very profound, and the angels took note of it. God told her, he says that your seed is going to be the seed that crushed Satan's head. Satan is going to bruise your heel, but your seed is going to crush his head. So now, they knew that it would be a woman that is going to bring forth a deliverer for humanity, for mankind, human nature. And so when men began to multiply and they started to have daughters, the angels decided, they came up with a plan that they had to come down and get these women and have sex with them and mess up the DNA pool for humanity. And when they grabbed these women and had sex with them around the world, this messed up the DNA pool so that a male deliverer for humanity could not come forth. That was the whole plan. But God had one man by the name of Noah, who was, the Bible said, perfect. Now of course we know Noah wasn't perfect, because he got drunk after he landed in the boat. But when he's talking about perfect, it meant without mark, without that in his human DNA there was no mark, angelic marks in him. There was no combination of angel blood and human blood combined together. That's what the word perfect was with Noah. So they begin to work this plan, and somebody said, well, I don't believe in the angelic theory when angels had sex with men, because Jesus said that you do greatly err, not knowing the scriptures, that men are not married, nor are they given in marriage in heaven, but they are like the angels, and angels don't have to have sex. And that is so true. Angels did not have to reproduce or multiply, because God had already set a number of angels in heaven. But that does not negate the fact that angels could change form, just as we talked about in Genesis chapter 18, when they take on the theophanic form and come in the human form. God shows up many times in the theophanic form in the Bible. And so we could see this happening in Genesis when the sons of God took on the human nature and came down and messed up the human pool. So now, in Genesis chapter 6, verse 2, it says this, that the sons of God saw the daughters of men, that they were fair, and they took them wives, all of which they chose. The sons of God. And some people say, well, those were the sons of Seth, and that doesn't mean that was those, that wasn't angels. But this word, you look at the word and you look at the statement. It says sons of God, the Benoah Elohim. The Benoah Elohim, the sons of God, when they saw the daughters of men, that they were suitable enough for them to go in and have sexual relations with, they took wives from men and they had sex with those women themselves. And they created an offspring called the Nephilim. And they were giants. The Bible goes on to say, and there were giants in the earth in that time. And these things were huge, and they were humongous. And so God destroyed them all. He destroyed them. He killed them in the flood. And listen, God didn't even give them the opportunity to be saved. He locked them out. He didn't even, he didn't give them opportunity because he didn't want to save that type of human gene pool that was combined with angel blood. So he killed them all. And the only people that he kept was 8 souls. And those were the ones that did not have the mark of angel blood in them. But anyway, moving on. So what were the angels doing? They were trying to mess up the human pool. They were trying to make sure that God's word to Eve, that she would bring forth a son. Now, of course, a woman does not have seed, and this was, man carries the seed in him. And so they knew that this was going to be a prophetic birth, that this was going to be without the aid of a man. So they tried to mess up as many women as they could. And I talked about this perversion because angels were not supposed to come down and mingle and have a commingle with man, because they are of a higher order. Just like you and I, we're not supposed to have sex with animals because we are of a higher order on God's scale, creation scale. And when the angels changed their form and came down in the human form to have sex with women, God locked them out, and they couldn't go back into the spirit form. Now, not all of those angels came down and changed form. Many of them are still up in principalities and powers and thrones and dominions. They're still spirits that are moving around and operating above us in the spirit realm. So is Satan. Satan himself didn't change his form, but he talked and coerced other angels into doing it. And when those angels did that, they sinned such a great sin that Peter says that God locked them up in hell, in a special hell, in a place called Tartarus. And Tartarus is the lowest hell in hell. And so they are chained in darkness right now. And Jude mentioned it too. And so I don't have time to talk about levels of hell and levels of sin and so on and so forth. But what else was the angels doing when they did this? They were trying to recreate in earth what they saw in heaven. What do I mean by this? In Ezekiel chapter 1, the angel that Ezekiel describes is a hybrid. He said the angel that he saw was a cherub, a cherubim. And that's exactly what Satan is or was in heaven. He was the anointed cherub that covered. But a cherub is made up of man. It is made up of a lion. It is made up of an eagle. It is also made up of an ox. It has 4 faces and it has 4 sides. It also has 4 wings, and it also has eyes throughout the wings. Ezekiel describes it and says that it has a man's thighs, but at its feet it has calves' feet. So it's a hybrid. The angels, when they came down, they begin to have sex with the women. They begin to have sex with men. They begin to have sex with animals, and they begin to splice together and make hybrids in the earth as to what they saw in heaven. God did not want hybrids in the earth. He wanted what he has in heaven, he has in heaven. But when he has in earth, he took man and separated him from the cow, and man was man and cow was cow, and the birds were birds, and so on and so forth. And when the angels rebelled against God, they wanted to mess up his creation because they couldn't get back into heaven. And they also tried to create what they saw in heaven here in the earth. There's another angel that Isaiah saw that was a hybrid. Isaiah, in Isaiah chapter 6, and he says, I saw the Lord in the year that Isaiah died. I saw the Lord, and he was high and lifted up, and his train of his glory filled the temple. And he said, and I saw angels described as seraphim, and these were serpent type like angels, and they were colored like brass, and but they had 6 wings. And with their 6 wings, 2 wings they covered the feet, 2 wings they flew, and 2 wings they covered their faces. And these were the hybrids. And the angels was trying to recreate hybrids in the earth, and but God didn't want that. So this is where this sexual perversion comes from. It comes from the angels, and they do their best, and they're doing their best to bring it back today through science. See, because God, when he said that my spirit won't always strive with man, God locked up the DNA code where angels couldn't do that with humanity anymore. As a matter of fact, there's certain animals, certain horses and cows that can't have offspring together because God locked up that DNA code as well. And so but the scientists now are trying to do that. And if you do your research, you'll see that they're having mice with human ears, and they having cows and bulls and all these different things. As a matter of fact, all this stuff from mythology is not mythical. It's true. That if you look throughout antiquity and all of the big buildings and the temples and the pyramids, all this stuff have the markings and show you that these things were hybrids and these things really existed. And if you look at Revelation chapter 9, in Revelation chapter 9, you'll see something called a chimera, which was a locust that's coming up out of the bottomless pit. And John said, I saw a star fall from heaven with having the key to the bottomless pit. And he opened up the bottomless pit. And when he opened it up, the locust came out. Now, these locusts was not the little bugs that you and I know. These things were horses with scorpion tails and serpent tails, a lion's head, a man's face, and lion's teeth, who could spit out fire and brimstone out of their mouth. And these were the hybrids. And where did they come from? They came out of the pit of hell, yes, but why were they in the pit of hell? And where did they come from? Who put them there, and in what time period were they put there? They were locked up in heaven from the time of Genesis chapter 6. These were the fallen angels. And so God locked them up because they had done a special sin and sinned against humanity. And God is not going to release them until the time of the great tribulation to harm those who did not receive the word of the Lord. Well, hopefully this has just been a little, it's not meant to try to go into great detail because I didn't want to spend a lot of time, but this is just kind of whet your appetite, and hopefully you can go and do a little further study on sex with the angels. And I'm your pastor, I'm your host, Pastor Jerome Davison. God bless you. Thanks for joining me.